What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how to make top tier minimal tech house drums. These are the exact techniques I've used in my own productions, which have helped me get signed to labels such as Short Circuits, Issues, and Cuff. And I've also taught these techniques to many of my one-to-one coaching clients that have gone on to sign to labels such as Repopulate Mars, Take Notes, and many more. So let's get stuck into Ableton and see what we can make. So we're inside Ableton now, and we're going to break this video down into two parts. Firstly, I'm going to show you a drum groove that I have pre-made, and we're going to run through every single technique that I use to make minimal tech house drums. And then in part two, I'm going to build a new drum groove and show you how easy it is to do with all the techniques that we went through. So here's the demo track I made earlier. Very clean, very raw, and very minimal, which is exactly the style we want to make. So let's start with the kick. Firstly, you need to make sure that you've got a good kick sample to begin with. For this kind of style, you're looking for something very short, clean, and punchy, and it will typically have quite a hard knock or transient to it. So I've opted for this kick here, which is going to work perfectly for our track. And what you'll find throughout this entire video is I'm using drum racks for all of my MIDI one-shots. And the reason for this is drum racks, when set up correctly, can 2x your workflow. Let me just go over this quickly before we get stuck in. So first thing you want to do is you need to go and grab an empty MIDI channel, and then you need to go to the drum section under library, and at the top there is drum racks. Drag that onto your MIDI channel and you'll have an empty drum rack. From here, what you want to do is you want to go through all of your favorite sample packs and pull out every individual sound you like. Individual kicks, individual claps, individual hi-hats, so on and so forth. Then you're going to collect them by their category of sound and put them in their own individual drum racks. And once you've done that, you can then save these drum racks so you have them every single time you load up Ableton. I'm also going to link this project file in my free community, so if you want all the drum racks I'm using throughout this video, just go to the first pinned comment and join the free community. You definitely won't regret it. So let's continue. And another common part of any minimal tech house groove is the kick fills. Now in this track, I've opted to duplicate the kick channel and add my kick fills in manually. As you can see here, they're on the off beats or the 0.2s or the 0.4s. And the main difference for this is I have put an EQ on here shaping the sound. And what you'll end up with is this almost heartbeat knock effect on your kick fills. And the contrast between that and your main kick can just be a nice variation. And if you didn't want that and you just wanted it like normal, then just turn off the EQ. Next up, we're going to run through our claps. So now let's go down to the claps. And for these, I have opted for two different types of claps and layered them on top of each other. The reason for this is I liked the top end of this clap and I liked the weight of this one, but neither had the full credentials of the clap I was looking for just by themselves. So together, they sound like this. Moving on down, we have the groove clap. So this is where you can start adding some claps in to just build upon the groove and bounce off of your kick groove. So you can see here, I'm adding on the 0.4, and then I've got this nice fill on the end of every 4 bars. Next up, we have my variation clap. Now this is not an essential part of any clap groove, but for me, I think claps can be quite stagnant and boring within drum grooves. So this is a technique I came up with just to add a bit more variation and add a bit more of a natural human element to the clap. So every other clap, you're going to layer with a different clap, and this is going to help create a bit of a contrast between the two claps. You just need to make sure that they sound similar and not too different, because if they were too different, it sounds a bit odd in the mix. Let me show you what it sounds like in my current groove. And what you'll notice is this second clap in every bar has this bit more of a splat to it. Now, like I said, you don't have to use this every single time, but it's something I like to incorporate within my grooves. Moving down, we have my next technique for claps, which is for mod claps. These are just claps with different types of effects on them. The effects we'll be looking at are delays and reverbs, the two easiest ones to get your head around. So first off, we have Mod Clap 1, which has a normal delay on it. And then I've just turned the on off so it cuts out before the next clap comes in over here. So this is what it sounds like. And you'll hear that as soon as this next clap comes in, this one turns off. So you're not getting any weird phasing issues and for the feedback going on for too long in that clap. Then we have Mod Clap 2, which is another form of delay, but this is a tape delay. To do this effect, you just need to change a couple things. So by standard, it will be on sync. You just need to change this to time. And then once you change it to time, you change the milliseconds to around about 30. And I would also recommend putting it on ping pong. And this will give you this effect. A really nice modular sounding clap, which works perfectly for this type of minimal tech house. And then finally going on the fill for bar 8, we just have a clap with a hybrid reverb. I really like this to add a bit more ambience to that final clap. And for this groove as well, I decided to add a little snare fill on the ends. Nothing crazy or nothing complicated, just happening every 4 bars. Something to be aware of with snares is they can take up quite a lot of space in the mix if you start adding a lot of snare grooves in there. If you think of tech house or garage, where there's a lot of jacking snares in there bouncing off the claps. Within minimal music, everything is so short and snappy. If you have these larger snares filling up too much space, it just doesn't fit right with the kind of vibe that you're going for. But this is what it sounds like in this groove. Moving down to the closed hi-hats now. So this is where you're going to build most of the fundamental groove and shuffle coming from your hats in your closed hi-hats. Starting with just a standard offbeat hi-hat. And again, you'll notice I'm using drum racks for all of these. What I'm looking for in this main offbeat closed hi-hat is a hi-hat that is fundamentally fairly high in frequencies, but has a bit of weight to it. So it really builds upon that 4 on the floor groove. And just with that one hi-hat alone, all of our claps and kicks are coming together and making a nice groove. Then I have layer 1 for the closed hi-hat. So this is landing exactly in the same place, but the hi-hat has a slightly different tonality and frequency spectrum to it, which helps it fill up a different pocket of the mix. What you'll notice is that hi-hat tends to pick up a bit more energy just compared to the normal closed hi-hat. Then we can move on to layer 2. So this is adding a bit more weight and texture to that main closed hi-hat. And those with good ears will notice that layer 2 sounds quite wide, and that's by using a stock Ableton plugin called Align Delay. This causes a Hawes effect on the sound, so it slightly delays one side of the stereo field compared to the other, making it perceived to be wider. All you need to do is go and grab this one from your plugins, drag and drop it on, then change either the left or the right by a few milliseconds. For this sound, I just opted for 2 milliseconds. Then we're going down onto a 2-step hi-hat pattern. So this is a hi-hat pattern on your kick and on your main hi-hat, which is on the 1.1.3. What you're going to do here is make sure the first hi-hat has quite a bit of velocity compared to your second hi-hat. The reason for this is you want there to be a bit more of a contrast because we're already layering a lot of hi-hats on this 1.1.3 of a beat or a bar. So what you want to do is just have that one slightly higher and you'll get this nice skip and bounce in your hi-hat. And for those that are struggling to hear it with the other elements of the track, and you can hear that kind of dip and bounce in between those hi-hats. Next up, we have the groove hi-hat. So this is fundamentally going to start bringing a bit more swing and shuffle into the hi-hat groove. I like to span this over either 1 or 2 bars and keep it fairly repetitive to help solidify the basics of the groove. And if we look at the patterns, you can see I'm adding a lot more on the 0.4s and the 0.2s. And that's because these ones add a lot more groove and shuffle and swing, which we will full circle back onto at the end. So next up, we have the ghost hi-hats. They're there to improve the groove, but not take away from anything that is going on. What should happen when done correctly is you should be able to notice a difference in feeling and the way the groove is moving, but you shouldn't really be able to hear any or many new hi-hats coming in the mix. You can tell that they're very subtle and doing the ghost effect. They're adding groove, but they're not really taking away from anything we've got going on. And that's for two reasons. One is placing them correctly in the mix. You can see these ones have turned down quite a bit, and I've also turned down quite a lot of the velocities when programming in the MIDI. Secondly, it's actually just choosing the right sample. When you have drum racks set up like this and you have all of your samples collected in one place, it's then very easy to start layering different hi-hats off of each other, because you'll be able to find the hi-hats that sound similar in frequency, but just different enough to have that distinguishing sound to help improve the groove. Next up, we have random hi-hats. So these ones are there for the sake of just adding in a bit of randomness. So I've done this over 4 bars, but you could do this over 8 bars, 16 bars, 32 bars. You could do it all over your track if you wanted to. So I've added in a hi-hat here and then a little hi-hat fill over on the end. And you'll notice this one is very loud, as I want that effect to come through. So remember, your velocity and volume are very important parts of building your groove, because that's what helps create contrast between the sounds. So now I've added in the claps and the kicks again. What you'll notice is the hi-hats are grooving really nicely, but we have lost a bit of that main offbeat hi-hat, which helps create that 4 on the floor groove. So let me just give it a quick play for you. Already grooving nicely and a nice bit of variation in there, but you can see what I mean. It just loses that 4 on the floor groove without that main offbeat hi-hat in place. And that's exactly what the body hat is. It's there for a hat to really add some weight on that 1.1.3 of a beat, which then helps that 4 on the floor groove. So now let me play it for you with the body hat in. And you can tell it's helping pick up the energy and identifying that 1.1.3 in the beat, which then helps that 4 on the floor groove. But it's not obnoxious, nor does it stand out too much, which is exactly what we want for our open hi-hats, which we'll be touching on in a second. And then before we touch on the open hi-hats, let's just have a look at a 16th hi-hat. Now for minimal music, I find 16th hi-hats can often take up a lot of space, so you need to be a bit careful with the sound selection and where you're placing them in the mix with regards to volume. For this 16th hi-hat, I've also gone and added 2 effects. I've added the phaser flanger, which is helping add a bit of movement, and the auto pan, which is helping it move around the mix. So let's just listen to these 2 in isolation. It's just a bit boring and a bit repetitive without these effects on. And I'm making sure I choose a very short and snappy hi-hat, so it's not taking up too much space in the mix. So now we've got the bulk of our groove in from our claps and our hi-hats, we can now look at adding some open hi-hats in to really help pick up the energy. So the open hi-hats I've opted for are quite minimal in that sense. They're not your typical 909 very washed out sounds. They're quite short and snappy, which fits in the mix nicely. And then just later on, 4 bars after, I help bring in another open hi-hat as a layer to identify more energy. And some of you would notice that's nice and wide again, and I'm using the align delay, but on this one, I'm going plus 12. So let's listen to these in the groove. You can tell it's very minimalistic. You almost have to pay attention to it, but you can definitely feel it, which is exactly what you need to be doing for this type of house music. Okay, so that's the core elements covered. Now we can just have a look at 2 other bits that I recommend doing to your drum grooves to help elevate them to that next level. The first one is using core kits. All of the core kits within the drum section in the library in Ableton, and they're all based off of some well-known drum machine. So the ones I opt for, but which work well with the samples I have chosen, are the 808 and the 606 core kits. But if you've gone for more of that modern tech house vibe, think Max Dean, Luke Dean, Josh Baker, then the 909 drum kits are also very good for that too. And the reason why I like these is because it adds so many familiar and classic sounds to your drum groove. So we have sounds like the maracas, or a rim shot, or even congas or bongos if you wanted to add those elements. And for the hi-hats, you have these nice classic open hi-hats, along with classic sounding closed hi-hats. So for this, you can see I've used a 808 kit just to add a bit more variation and groove with some classic sounds, and the same with the 606 later on. So these two in isolation sound like this. And then with the drum groove as a whole. It just adds a bit more texture and depth to the drum grooves. And that's exactly what the top section will do too. So the tops are where you're then going to incorporate some top loops from your favorite sample packs to help fill out some empty space and add a bit more texture within your grooves. Now, a lot of people will start their groove with top loops, but I think it's much better if you can do exactly what we've done in this video and add your own original elements first from using drum racks that you've pre-built, and then using top loops to elevate what you've already created instead of the other way around. With these top loops as well, I've made sure to go in to the clips themselves, go into the envelopes and go to the bottom down here, clip, and remove the claps. The reason for this is I've already got quite a lot of claps in my groove, and I don't want too many frequencies building up in that exact spot, nor do I want to alter the sound of my clap as I'm really happy with it. So you can just cut away the claps like so. Fairly easy and straightforward stuff. And in the drum groove itself, they just help add that texture and definition. And there you go. I hope you enjoyed this video. Some action items for you to take away are either go and join the free community and download this project file, or go through all of your own samples and take the samples that you like, including kicks, claps, hi-hats, different percussion hits, and put them in their own individual drum racks and save them so you can 2x your workflow. And from there, you can then think about adding layers to your sound instead of just opting for basic one samples. This helps add some variation and depth to your groove. If you need more help and guidance to finish your tracks than just these YouTube videos, then head to the first link in the bio to work with me on a one-on-one basis or join Serotonin Studio. Stick around for part 2, where we'll incorporate all of the techniques we just covered into a new drum groove.